In 2011, Daniel Blumberg was at the centre of Yuck, who were then one of indie rock's most exciting new bands. Critics hailed them as the next Dinosaur Jr., or the rightful heirs to Pavement, the best thing to happen to 90s nostalgia since, well, the 90s. Their self-titled debut had all the hallmarks of a generational classic: earnest lyrics and catchy hooks, all concealed behind walls of fuzzy guitars. And then, just as quickly as things began, Blumberg was gone. He quit his own band, vanished from the indie scene, and spent years making avant-garde music that almost no one heard. And then a few weeks ago, he won an Oscar. Right. So how did this same musician, who once walked away from indie stardom into obscurity, reinvent himself as one of the most celebrated composers in film today? And what can Blumberg's unique path tell us about creativity? Let's get into it. In 2011, indie rock was in an interesting place. Bands like The Strokes and Arcade Fire had shed their indie beginnings to become reliable commercial giants, whilst newcomers like The Vaccines and Tame Impala were carving out their own lane. Into this scene came Yuck. The London Four Pieces' debut album was a dream for 90s revivalists. Distorted guitars, slacker vocals, lo-fi aesthetics. It was loud, raw, and pleasingly nostalgic. Led by vocalist Daniel Blumberg, the album was packed with tracks like Get Away and The Wall, scuzzy songs that felt like lost gems from an era that had faded decades ago.
Trying to make it through the wall. Trying to make it through the wall. You can see me if you're tall. You can see me if you're tall.
That debut album won the band plenty of acclaim, and the group soon found themselves touring the world, poised to be the next big thing. But just as Yuck's momentum was building, Blumberg bailed. Imagine being in your early 20s, the lead singer of a band with a critically praised debut album, playing to packed venues across the world and deciding, nope, I'm out. In an unexpected announcement on Facebook in 2013, Yuck made a statement saying that Blumberg had left the band to focus on other things, namely his own new creative musical projects. What followed was a drastic reinvention. Blumberg started putting out music under various different and awkward names. There was Ooper, Guo and Hebronix, to name just a handful. All of these projects had one thing in common: they were worlds away from the indie rock that Blumberg had inhabited in his previous band. The releases under these various guises were abstract, spacey, and often veered away significantly from the strictures of a typical pop song. Instead of chasing hit songs or mimicking bygone genres, Blumberg's creative vision was always evolving, and he became especially obsessed with freeform improvisation, minimalist compositions, and experimental noise. Becoming a mainstay fixture at Dalston's Café Otto, a kind of outpost for the global avant-garde, Blumberg was building something weirder and far more outre than anything he'd put out in his indie days. It was unpredictable, sometimes erratic, but always driven from a well of unique creative expression that didn't comply with the expectations of what had come before him. For years, Blumberg's music barely reached the mainstream, but those who did pay attention saw something quite special. In 2018, for the first time, Blumberg would release music under his own name, putting out his debut album, Minus. The music was stark, raw, and marked by a strict inclination towards space, improvisation, and atonality. It's fair to say Blumberg had left pop music far behind him. Though Blumberg's albums were by no means mainstream concerns, it was on these records that the seeds of his future were planted. Independent film directors began noticing his work, particularly his ability to craft music that felt like isolation, turmoil, and urgency, which made him a perfect fit for cinema. Soon, Blumberg's compositions started showing up in art house films, scoring scenes with subtlety and sparseness. Blumberg wasn't just scoring movies, but reflecting the emotions of the on-screen scenes with his own musical rawness. By 2022, his film work had won him numerous accolades, including a much coveted Ivor Novello Award for his scoring work on the film The World to Come. In 2015, Blumberg had also met the American film director Brady Corbett, and years later, when Corbett was looking for a composer to score his new film The Brutalist, he called up Blumberg to see if he would be interested. Blumberg was struck by the premise of the film, a 3.5-hour epic that spans the story of a Holocaust survivor and architect who arrived in the States to chase the American dream. The film is ultimately about the pursuit of artistic integrity, a subject that struck a chord with Blumberg, who'd spent his career in monomaniacal pursuit of his own creative path, often turning his back on new sounds as soon as he'd landed upon them. In an interview with Pitchfork in January, Blumberg said, "The film is about an artist and the artist's struggle, and I've dedicated my life to my work for better or for worse. There were definitely elements of it that I felt like I could relate to, like in terms of sacrifice, in terms of how it can affect the relationship between your work and your relationships in life." Blumberg was essentially saying that his own approach to his music, which was uncompromising in its ambition, mirrored the Brutalist's own protagonist. Blumberg's resulting score wasn't a traditional orchestral epic. Like much of his solo work, it was intimate, eerie, and jarringly dissonant in places. Blumberg's score didn't just accompany the film, it became weaved into the very fabric of the movie, an illustration using sound of the protagonist's journey in the film. That all led, of course, to the Oscars a few weeks ago. When Blumberg's name was called as the winner of the Oscar for the Best Original Score category, it was a weird surprise for indie fans everywhere. Here in the flesh was a crazy but envious career arc. First, the previous singer of a niche indie band, through to experimental auteur, through to full-blown Oscar winner. But Blumberg's triumph wasn't just a victory for him, it was proof that taking the long and winding road, the weird and difficult path with plenty of self-questioning, can often still lead to something extraordinary. Blumberg's journey is one of the most fascinating transformations in music. He didn't just follow the script given to him, he tore it up, followed his instincts, and wrote his own ending. If you dug this video, you might also enjoy my video on Mike Skinner of The Streets, and his approach to writing the album A Grand Don't Come For Free, a record that spurned expectations and surprised fans and critics alike. You can check that video out here. And if you made it this far, I'd love it if you hit the subscribe button, and comment below on what you think of this video and Daniel Blumberg's journey and his work on The Brutalist. Thanks for watching, and as ever, catch you in the next video.